This week's parsha is filled with mitzvahs. But when is studying the parsha just hits you, it's a hodgepodge of so many unrelated mitzvahs, a few clusters here and there. Mora Avaim, Mora Mikdash, got some Zroim in there, of course, Bein Adam L'Chavero. Such a hodgepodge. One would think, the author of this book was the creator himself. He couldn't do a better job at organizing things. Would you hire him as an editor? So there's got to be a message. The disorganization, the hodgepodge, that's got to be telling us something. The passage begins, Kedoshim Tiyu. Kadosh, elevated, different, separate, special. So what's the message of the parsha? How does one become kadosh? It's everything. The message of the parsha is holism. The message of the parsha is that you can't just specialize in one area and claim greatness. Kedusha means everything. Sure, for every mitzvah there's reward. Every mitzvah builds you in this world and of course in the world to come. But real Kedusha, what Kedusha is about is everything. Not neglecting any aspect of whom you are. It's everything altogether. We know today, a good doctor specializes in 2 centimeters of your colon. I dealt with cases, someone needs an orthopedic surgeon. No, that side of the knee, you've got to go to someone else for. And there's a lot to be said for that. That means that there's someone who's got so much experience with one part of the knee. But at the same time, what happened to the good old family GP who knew you inside out? Who can tell you that your problem is not just this worn out ligament there. It's your whole self. It's your lifestyle, it's your diet. It's the ring on your phone that makes you neurotic. We all know that as great as specialization is, holism is so much more accurate. It's not a Band-Aid. It's not setting you up for tomorrow's procedure. In Torah, Kedusha, being a Jew, yeah, There are so many wonderful mitzvahs. And there's so much depth of wisdom to every single one of them. And face it, everyone's got a different personality, and we know that what that stems from is Shorish Hanashama, the root of your soul. And everyone relates to something, or one or two or three mitzvahs in a different way. They speak to him like to nobody else. And you feel like really learning them up, studying everything about them, and really observing them to the greatest extent possible. So we got a mitzvah of Kedoshim to you. You got to build yourself on all fronts. There's something called shleimus. The Mesilas Yesharim, at the very beginning, the first chapter, where he tells us what we're here for. Chovas ha'adam ba'olama, what are we here for? Yes, it's to connect to Hashem. It's to feel that pleasure of kirvas Elokim. And ultimately, in Olam Haba, lehanos miziv shchinasa, have the eternal, most intense pleasure possible, the pleasure of connection to Hashem. And he tells us, how do you get there? And he makes a point of this thing called shleimus, perfection. And he says there, it's from the collection of everything that you get. The truth is, that's how the parsha begins. Kedoshim tiyu ki kadosh ani. Be holy because I'm holy. The Torah is describing, how do you connect to Hashem? Hashem is perfect. Hashem is perfect. He's not just big. He's perfect. You connect to him by building your perfection. How do you build perfection? It means not neglecting anything. Does that mean that every one of us is expected in our lifetimes to reach absolute perfection in every area? Well, if that were the case, Hashem would have to give us very, very, very long lives, like a few thousand years. But what it means is that you can't neglect anything. What it means is that just because you do one mitzvah so right, but your midos, your bein adam lachavero, you don't have the patience for the people around you because you're too busy working on your special mitzvah. You work in the wrong direction. It's all about shleimus, about perfection, about everything. The famous expression of Rav Yisrael Salanter, the founder of the Musar movement, he used to say that we find the halacha is that if you have a choice between making a bracha on a larger piece of food or on a complete piece of food, on a small roll or half of a large loaf of bread, the small roll wins. The small roll wins. Why? So the expression he uses based on the Gemara. Sholein, that which is complete, is more prominent than godol, than large. You can be huge in one area, but then you're incomplete and lopsided. We have to grow holistically. That everything, every area be appropriate for you where you're at. Not soar in one area and leave everything behind. So yes, that means your relationship with Hashem, your ben adam lamakom, your ben adam lachavero, ben adam la'atzmo. We have that in the parsha as well. Yourself. Working on every one of your midas. Every one of your midas. Can you simultaneously work on everything? No. It's overwhelming. But you can't neglect them. You can't neglect them. You got to have your list. And even if there are aspects of your personality that are really difficult to confront at this point, at least don't let them run away with you. Make sure that they're contained. You're not perfect, but at least they're contained. You're under control. We got to work on everything. The goal is Kedoshim to you. Ki Kedoshim. The goal is connecting to Hashem. In fact, if our connection is dependent on being like Hashem, I mean, how big is Hashem? How big is infinity? We cannot measure our connection to Hashem on the basis of how big we are. Because there's just no way that we can possibly come close. I mean, they're two different, it's qualitatively different. We're finite, he's infinity. How is it that we can connect? It's the fact that we deal with every aspect of ourselves. Shleimus doesn't mean that you're super duper 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 in everything. What it means is that you're on top of everything. You cannot ignore any aspect of whom you are. It has to be dealt with lots of thought, at the right time, in the right way, but can't be neglected. It can't be neglected. Now, especially if you devote your time to Torah study. It is just so inappropriate for somebody who is studying divine wisdom to be lacking in character. It's just so inappropriate. The Rambam dedicates an entire chapter in Mishnah Torah to the appropriate behavior of one who is wise, of one who is a Talmid Chacham. And he says, just as one who is wise stands above others through his intelligence, it's got to be that you can tell the difference in his behavior. If your growth in Torah, if your ability to analyze text is above where it was when you first walked in, you've got to ask yourself, is every other aspect of who I am, has that grown as well, or have I neglected it? When guys go home and all their families can see is that they're now religious or more religious, but they can sense in them, this is a greater person. This is someone who respects his parents in a different way. This is someone who deals with other human beings on a higher level. If they can sense everything else and all they see is more bein adam lamakom, keeping more mitzvahs, then you're not growing holistically. Then it's not Kedoshim to you, ki Kedoshim. So this parsha is not in disarray. This parsha was deliberately comprised of so many diverse mitzvahs for the sake of getting the message across. It's everything. Kedusha means everything. Don't neglect any aspect of your personality. Don't neglect any aspect of whom you are. You've got to grow and grow. Understand what's right. Understand what's not so right. Make demands on yourself. And see what it's like when you're an elevated human being and feel that closeness to the Creator, because now you become more like Him. That's the message of the parsha. That's what a Jew is about. If you can really do that, then your very being is going to affect everyone around you. When people see real Kedusha, when people see a person being really special, when they see that, they ask themselves, why do I have to be like that? I want that too. That does better than any lecture. Does better than any proof. So it's for the sake of coming close to Hashem. But the fringe benefit is that you can bring others closer to Hashem by growing holistically. Kedoshim to you, Kedosh